Last New Year's Eve, I went to my friend Jake's house for a small get-together. I was 30 then and had been lonely working from home. When Jake invited me, I felt hopeful. Reconnecting with an old friend could be fun. Jake's house was a small, two-story home in a neighborhood that looked stuck in time. The lawns were decorated and the old street lamps glowed. Inside, though, the place felt quiet and almost sad. I remembered it differently from our childhood. The vintage decorations felt more like a ghost of the past than a celebration. As midnight drew near, we gathered in the living room. Laughter filled the air as we shared stories from our youth. Just then, the lights flickered and went out. After a moment, they came back on. I glanced at a framed photo on the wall. It was of all of us from years ago. I swear I saw a shadowy figure behind Jake that wasn't there before. I felt uneasy, but I laughed it off, thinking I was just seeing things. Later, while we played a board game, we heard the basement door creak open. It sounded like it had been unlocked. Our laughter stopped. We exchanged confused glances. Then we heard laughter from below. It didn't sound like any of us. I felt my heart race. Knock, knock. The sound echoed, chilling me to the bone. I was sure something was down there, watching us, waiting. Soon, we found an old box of party favors that Jake had saved from previous New Year's Eves. Some items were silly, like noisemakers. Others felt familiar in a weird way, but I couldn't remember half of the moments we were said to have shared. A fog of confusion settled over us, and I questioned if we were forgetting something important. As the countdown approached, an uneasy feeling washed over me. Our conversations felt strained. Every time someone glanced back at the basement door, it felt like the house was holding a terrible secret. I tried to ignore it, but the feeling was there, pulling at the back of my mind. It was like we were unwittingly engaging in something sinister. When the countdown began, I found myself staring at the basement door. I swore that something was about to come out. I caught Jake's eye. I saw fear mirrored in his expression. Suddenly, I thought I heard my name softly echoing. Max. I turned quickly, and the basement door stood slightly open, an invitation into darkness. I don't really know what happened that night. Was it just the atmosphere, or was something else going on? The memory lingers, haunting me. I left without discussion, and since then I can't shake that feeling. I think I'll always wonder about what was waiting in the shadows at Jake's house. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I decided to call Jake. It took several rings before he picked up. His voice sounded off, like he was just waking up. I asked him about the party. He seemed hesitant to discuss it. "Yeah, it was, weird," he admitted. "Did anything strange happen to you?" I hesitated, unsure of how to explain what I felt.
"I don't know. Just the laughter from the basement, and that shadow. Did you see it?" There was silence on the other end. "I didn't see anything," he finally said, but his tone was shaky. "Just someone messing with us, I guess." I couldn't shake the doubt. It felt easy to wave it off as a prank, but deep down, I knew it was more than that. I told him I'd stop by later to grab my things. When I arrived at his house, the air felt heavy. I parked in front, staring at the house. It looked normal, but something in my gut twisted. As I walked up the path, I noticed the porch lights flickering. Hadn't they been steady before? Jake opened the door, his face pale. "Hey, thanks for coming," he said, but his eyes darted toward the basement. I felt a rush of discomfort as I stepped inside. "Oh, can I use your bathroom quickly?" I asked, trying to break the tension. He nodded, but his gaze remained on the basement door. I walked past him, heart pounding. I hurried down the hall, but all I could think about was what waited below. The bathroom door clicked shut behind me, but I felt the need to look. I peeked out the window towards the basement. I felt a strange pull, like I had to know. That voice calling my name echoed in my mind. What if it was something important? I opened the window slightly and leaned out. The street was empty and quiet, but I could hear something from the basement. Soft whispers, like a conversation. My breath hitched. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I felt drawn to it. After what felt like an eternity, I made my way back to the living room. Jake was sitting on the couch, tense. "Did you find your things?" "No, just thinking," I trailed off, but his eyes flickered towards the basement again. "What's about that door? Why is it still open?" I left it unlocked, but he sounded distant, as if he was lost in thought. Just then, a loud bang came from below. We froze, hearts pounding. "What was that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Let's check it out," Jake said, but the certainty in his voice was lacking. I knew we shouldn't go down there, but something compelled us. As we made our way to the basement door, I felt an unsettling chill crawl up my spine. Just as Jake reached for the handle, I thought I saw movement in the shadows at the bottom of the stairs. Then I realized something. I left my phone in the bathroom. I turned to make a quick dash back, but as I did, I heard whispering again, clearer this time. "Max." I stopped dead in my tracks. My heart raced. I turned slowly back towards Jake, who was now wide-eyed, staring at the door. "Did you hear that?" I whispered frantically. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, plunging the room into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and that's when I noticed something move behind Jake. It wasn't just a shadow. Before I could process it, the door slammed shut. I jolted, the sound of the door slamming echoing like a gunshot.
Jake and I both jumped, our eyes wide with fear. I pressed a hand against my mouth, trying to stifle the scream that threatened to escape. "Jake," I whispered, my voice trembling, "what was that?" He didn't respond right away. I could see him swallowing hard, his gaze fixed on the basement door, as if it had just spoken. "We need to get out of here," he finally said, backing away slowly. I nodded, turning around to head for the front door. But before we could move, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the room in a harsh glow. Everything appeared normal, furniture in place, the walls untouched, but the tension in the air felt dense, palpable, like a thunderstorm brewing just out of sight. "Did you see anything?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. Jake shook his head. "No, but something's wrong. We shouldn't still be here." The whispers were gone, but my skin prickled. I felt there was more in that basement than just darkness. My instincts urged me to leave, yet something anchored me in place. What if we just take a peek?" I suggested, instantly regretting it. The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy with implications. What was I thinking? "Are you kidding?" he snapped, his expression a mix of shock and fear. "After what just happened? We need to—" But before he could finish, the basement door creaked open an inch, as if beckoning us closer. I felt a rush of heat flood my cheeks. I glanced at Jake, who looked equally torn between curiosity and terror. Something primal in me urged me to look. "We can't just ignore it," I insisted. "What if someone's down there?" "Or something," he muttered, but fear had shifted into a fierce determination. As we hesitated, the door swung wider. A low, guttural sound reverberated from the depths, a mix of laughter and something dark. It twisted my gut. "I don't think this is a good idea," Jake said, eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. I could see he was about to bolt for the door. Just as I considered following him, a small object caught my eye. It was lying on the floor near the foot of the stairs. I squinted to see what it was. A small, cracked mirror reflecting the dim light. My heart sank when I saw a flash of movement behind me in its surface. "Jake, look!" I shouted, pointing at the mirror. He turned, but before he could process it, the basement door slammed shut again with a deafening clang. The sound reverberated through my bones. "What the hell?" he yelled, panic rising. Then muffled laughter erupted from the other side of the door, almost mocking. I took a step back, my chest tightening. This wasn't a prank anymore. It felt real and sinister. As the laughter subsided, a long, deep silence filled the air. In that quiet, I realized something. I had to make a choice. I either faced the unknown or I ran. But before I could decide, the laughter returned, now much closer,
a chilling echo that rattled through the walls.
Max. The voice was clearer this time, and it was calling me. That's when I saw it, a dark figure looming in the corner of the room, watching us. A lazy grin twisted its mouth. In that moment I froze, rooted in place by confusion and fear. "What do you want?" I asked, although I barely recognized my own voice. The figure moved slightly, and I could see Jake out of the corner of my eye, his face paler than I'd ever seen. We were trapped, and I knew I had to act fast. The figure inched closer, and a chill raced down my spine. Shadows draped around it like a cloak. I could barely breathe, the air thickening with dread. My thoughts raced. "What is it?" I whispered to myself, but the words were lost in the room's oppressive silence. "Max." The voice dripped with familiarity, and it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to scream. What kind of twisted joke was this? "Jake, we need to go," I blurted out, my instincts screaming at me to escape. I turned slowly, my eyes locked on the figure. It felt like it was draining the energy from the room. It hadn't moved, but its gaze weighed heavy on my chest. "Max, wait!" Jake whispered urgently, his eyes darting between me and the figure. He took a step forward, as if drawn in by an unseen force. "What if it's just what? A figment of our imagination? Then why can I feel it?" I interrupted, the edge of my voice sharpening with fear. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, then died again, plunging us into darkness. I reached for Jake, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might burst. The faint sound of laughter began to echo, mocking us from all directions. It rattled across the walls, a chorus of sinister amusement. A low whisper brushed my ear. "Max." It sent a shiver down my spine. The voice didn't come from the figure, but seemed to emanate from the very walls around us. Panic washed over me, and I grabbed Jake's arm, pulling him back toward the door. We hurried to the door, which was locked tight. I frantically twisted the knob, but it wouldn't budge. "Why won't it open?" I gasped. "Let go!" Jake shouted, and in the next moment he yanked on the door with all his might. The sound of creaking wood broke the tension, but it still didn't move. "We have to force it," I said, adrenaline coursing through me. No sooner had those words left my lips than the whispers intensified, overlapping into a frenzied cacophony. "Let us out! Let us out!" they chanted, and I felt the walls closing in around us. Without thinking, I turned back to the figure, which still stood, eerily still in the darkness. "What do you want?" I shouted, trying to project confidence. It didn't move, but the moment I spoke, the laughter shifted to a low growl. My heart raced at the shift in tone. This wasn't just some psychological game. It felt like something had awakened. Suddenly, the mirror from earlier caught my eye. It lay cracked on the ground, glinting in the trickle of light. I remembered the flash I'd seen before. "Jake, the mirror!" I pointed urgently. "It might be important." Before I could reach for it, the figure stepped forward, and the room seemed to spiral. I felt a pull, as if the floor was shifting beneath us. "Max!" Jake called out, but the ground felt impossibly unsteady. I lunged for the mirror, desperate for some kind of connection to reality. As I grasped it, a sudden flash of images surged through me, quick, jarring snapshots of other faces, each disrupted and distorted. Their eyes mirrored fear, and their mouths opened in silent screams. And then everything went dark. I blinked hard against the sudden void. A weight pressed against my chest, as if I was trapped in a deep water. I gasped and fought for some semblance of air. The darkness felt thick and suffocating. Just when I thought I'd lost the ability to breathe, a sliver of silver light cut through the gloom, illuminating my surroundings. I was back in the room, but everything was different.
Shadows loomed larger, twisting into grotesque shapes along the walls. Jake stood beside me, his eyes wide and terrified. "What just happened?" he whispered, the tremor in his voice matching my own panic. I don't know," I stammered, struggling to grasp the mirror still clenched in my hand. It felt warm, pulsing almost, like a heartbeat. The shattered pieces reflected fragments of the dark room with an eerie glow. "We have to get out." The figure was gone. My heart raced at the thought, but the laughter had also faded. In its place stood a stillness that felt wrong, like everything had paused to witness our fear. Instinctively, I turned to the door again, still locked tight, but I could feel something different now. The air thrummed, charged with an electricity that set my nerves on edge. Jake stepped closer to the door. "Max, listen." His voice fell into a hushed tone, almost reverent. I turned to him, confused. "Do you hear that?" At first, all I heard was my own breath, but then I caught it. A whisper this time, softer, like a fragile echo. "Help us," I shivered. "Who's asking for help?" Jake shook his head, uncertainty clouding his gaze. "I don't know, but we can't stay here." As he spoke, the mirror flashed again, revealing another fragmented face, a girl this time. Her mouth moved silently, her expression pleading. I strained to understand her, confusion swirling in my mind. Then the room shifted. The walls began to pulse like a living thing. I caught a glimpse of something shifting beyond, a memory replaying, confused. I needed to understand what was happening, but the fear clenched like a vice around my heart. "Max, focus!" Jake's voice broke through the fog. "What do you see?" I took a breath and concentrated on the mirror, and as I did, the light intensified, illuminating the dark corners of the room. The girl's face became clearer, her eyes wide with terror.
"I think she needs us to see something." In that instant, the mirror's surface rippled, and I could swear that there was a flicker of hope in Emily's eyes. "Max, help! Find me!" she whispered, her voice now clearer than the murmur that had enveloped us. "Find her?" Jake echoed, his bewilderment growing with each passing second. "How do we—" Then the whisper devolved into cries. The walls shook, vibrating with an invisible force. I felt the temperature drop, sending chills down my spine. Out of the corner of my eye, a shape moved at the edge of the room. My breath caught. "What was that?" I stammered, eyes darting toward the darkness. Someone or something loomed there, dark and indistinct, but the moment I turned to fully face it, the figure vanished. "Max!" Jake pulled me back, panic flaring in his eyes. "We need to get out." But the room felt alive, shifting and twisting. I couldn't make sense of anything, and a fear deeper than I had ever known clenched at my core. That's when I saw it, a glimmer in the corner of the room. No, not just a glimmer, something shining. No, someone. "Who are you?" I whispered, certain that whatever it was had to be answered. And then everything went black once more. When I opened my eyes again, I was still on the floor, but the room had changed. The shadows had grown darker, and the echo of the whispering was almost a roar now. "Help us!" The plea resonated in my mind, filling the void with despair. "Jake?" I croaked, shuddering at the thought of being alone. My voice felt small against the chaos. "Here!" he shouted back, though it was faint, as if he were far away. I turned my head, searching for him. He was near the wall, visibly shaking. The glimmer of light I had seen earlier had vanished. "Where's that light?" I asked, desperation clawing at my throat. "We need to focus on that." "I don't know," Jake hissed, backing away from the shadows pressing against him. "They're all around us." The walls pulsed again. "Help us," came the incessant call, and I realized it wasn't just a sound. It was a feeling, wrapping around us and tightening. I fought the urge to scream, forcing myself to think clearly. "Maybe it's coming from the mirror," I said, pointing to the broken shards scattered across the floor.
Emily was trying to tell us something. What if she still is? Tentatively, I crawled toward the nearest piece, its edges sharp and dangerous. I peered into the glass, not sure what I would find. The reflection was murky at first, but slowly it faded into clarity. I saw Emily, or at least a version of Emily. She looked desperate, trapped behind the glass, as if it had become a barrier instead of a portal. "Emily!" I cried out. "What do you need us to do?" In response, her lips moved. I strained to hear her, but the sound was drowned by the whispers amplifying around us. "Find the key," she seemed to say, though the words formed more questions. "What key?" I murmured, glancing at Jake for guidance.
But he was too fixated on the shadows pressing closer, inching toward us like a dark tide. Suddenly, a loud cracking noise echoed throughout the room. The mirror's pieces began to vibrate, the shards jumping at my feet. "Max, we don't have time. We have to get out now," Jake yelled, his voice cracking. But I was rooted in place, mind racing. The key, that's what we need. "Where?" Jake looked at me as if I had lost my mind. "What are you talking about?" Then I remembered something. The attic, the old chest Emily told me about, remember? It might be in there. Jake hesitated, glancing at the flickering shadows. "And then what? What do we do with a chest?" "I don't know, but it's our only shot," I insisted, finally letting adrenaline guide me. I scrambled up, grabbing his arm, and I could feel the strange energy surging through the air as we headed towards the door. With all the strength I had, I shouldered the door, and it finally gave way with a groan. Cold air rushed in, but somewhere in the distance I heard Emily's whisper again, "Find the key." The attic stairs groaned beneath us as we climbed. A sudden crash echoed from inside the home, rattling the walls and sending a shudder through me. I held my breath, grabbing Jake's shoulder. "We're not alone," I said, and the fear in his face mirrored my own. Before we could reach the attic door, a dark shape lunged at us from the shadows. I barely had time to react before it connected with me, throwing me back as everything blurred into chaos. I hit the floor hard, my vision swimming. The dark shape loomed over me, shadowy and undefined. I was disoriented, but adrenaline surged through me. I scrambled backward, my hands searching for anything solid to grip. "Max!" Jake shouted, fear lacing his voice. I could hear the scuffle of his feet as he rushed to help, but I had to focus on what was in front of me. Just as I regained my bearings, the figure lunged again. I rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding its grasp. I could see now that it was a twisted amalgamation of shadows, whispering fragmented words in a cold, hissing voice. "Help us! Let us in!" "Get away from him!" Jake shouted, lunging at the figure. He threw himself into the darkness, fists swinging. I blinked, unsure if he'd even make contact, but I prayed he did. Suddenly, I noticed the mirror shards catching a sliver of moonlight, still scattered across the floor. My mind spun back to Emily and her warning. If she could see something in the mirror, maybe we could too. I momentarily diverted my eyes from the shadow wrestling with Jake and crawled closer to the nearest shard. With a deep breath, I peered into it again. The reflection shimmered, and for a split second I thought I could see something in the depths. It was a key, a shimmering silver key, ornate and glinting, just a hint too far to grasp. It filled me with hope, but there was also a sense of urgency. The whispers grew louder in protest, and the shadow felt like it was gaining strength. "Jake, the key!" I shouted, desperate. His struggle with the shadow looked brutal. The darkness flickered, momentarily revealing a glimpse of its twisted face, deformed with hunger. "What do you mean?" he gasped, grappling, but my words seemed to jerk him back to reality. "The attic! We need to find the key in the chest!" I cried out, my heart racing. I gestured at the remaining shards, trying to get him to understand. "Go! I'll hold it off!" Jake yelled, throwing one last punch at the shadow. He was struggling, but there was an edge of determination in his voice. "Are you crazy?" I shouted back, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Just go!" He shoved me towards the attic door, and the urgency in his voice propelled me forward. I braced myself and darted past the fighting shape.
As I reached the attic door, I could hear the muffled sounds of their struggle behind me. My heart pounded in my chest, each thud matching the ticking clock that seemed to echo in the oppressive air. "Please let there be something," I whispered as I flung open the attic door. The wooden steps creaked ominously as I charged up, ready to face whatever lay within. The attic was cluttered, just as I remembered, but where was the chest? I scanned the dim light, my breath coming in quick gasps. Then I spotted it, half hidden beneath a pile of dust and old newspapers. The antique trunk was aged and locked, but still it felt like a beacon of hope. I rushed over, my fingers trembling as I fumbled with the lock. There had to be a key inside, but as I knelt there, the very air shifted, growing colder. I felt it then, a weight of dread settling over me. That's when I heard a soft whisper, clearer now, slicing through the chaos. "Help us. You're running out of time." I froze, staring at the trunk. I had to hurry, but fear wormed through me. I had no idea what I would find or if it would even help. Just as I began searching for a way to open it, the attic door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into darkness. I stumbled back, my heart racing. The sudden darkness engulfed me, and I could barely see anything. I fumbled for the edges of the trunk, desperate for the reassuring solidity of its wood. The whispers rose and fell, filling the cramped space with an unbearable tension. "Help us! Do it!" "Shut up!" I growled, but even I could hear the edge of panic in my voice. I needed to think. I needed to find that key. As I strained to hear beyond the whispers, I noticed the attic was colder than before. The air seemed to pulse with a weight I couldn't understand. I forced myself to breathe, focusing on the task at hand. The lock was old, but I could see the mechanism glinting even in the low light. That's when I heard it, a thud followed by a low growl echoing through the attic walls. I whipped my head around, suddenly aware that I wasn't alone. My earlier fear morphed into icy dread. The whispers fell silent, and for a moment everything hung in the air. I rushed back to the trunk, my breath coming in short bursts. I needed that key, whatever it was, to open the trunk and hopefully find a way to help Jake. I scanned the surrounding clutter for anything that could assist me, a tool, anything. My fingers brushed against something sharp and metallic hidden beneath the newspapers. I pulled it out. It was a small screwdriver, but it would have to do. I immediately turned back to the lock, jamming the tip into the latch. It clicked, but still wouldn't budge. I cursed under my breath, frustration building. I couldn't give up, but the growl sounded closer, more menacing. Come on, I muttered to myself, the urgency rising. I twisted and pried at the lock, gritting my teeth as the scrape of metal against metal filled the air. Then I heard another sound, a voice. The air seemed to pulse with a weight I couldn't understand. I forced myself to breathe, focusing on the task at hand. The lock was old, but I could see the mechanism glinting even in the low light. That's when I heard it, a thud followed by a low growl echoing through the attic walls. I whipped my head around, suddenly aware that I wasn't alone. My earlier fear morphed into icy dread. The whispers fell silent, and for a moment everything hung in the air. I rushed back to the trunk, my breath coming in short bursts. I needed that key, whatever it was, to open the trunk and hopefully find a way to help Jake. I scanned the surrounding clutter for anything that could assist me, a tool, anything. My fingers brushed against something sharp and metallic hidden beneath the newspapers. I pulled it out. It was a small screwdriver, but it would have to do. I immediately turned back to the lock, jamming the tip into the latch. It clicked, but still wouldn't budge. I cursed under my breath, frustration building. I couldn't give up, but the growl sounded closer, more menacing. Come on, I muttered to myself, the urgency rising. I twisted and pried at the lock, gritting my teeth as the scrape of metal against metal filled the air. Then I heard another sound, a voice, softer yet somehow clearer. Help us. Panic shot through me. What did it want? Why did they need help? My heart raced again as I pushed harder against the lock, sweat trickling down the back of my neck. The growl grew louder now, sounding like it was right outside the door. I was running out of time.
I pressed against the lock one last time, my breath shallow. With a final twist, the lock broke free, and the lid of the trunk popped open. But before I could look inside, a shadow flickered in the corner of my eye. I turned just in time to see a figure step through the attic door, its face twisted in an evil grin, eyes gleaming with malice. And that's when the darkness swallowed the room once more. I didn't know how long I lay there, enveloped in an oppressive darkness, but when I opened my eyes, the attic was lit by a soft, eerie glow. The air felt different, almost stale, but clung to me as if alive. I scrambled up, every nerve in my body tingling with urgency. To my relief, the trunk remained open, its contents illuminated by that faint light. I leaned over, peering inside. My breath caught. Nestled among folded fabrics and old photographs lay the silver key, exactly like the one I had seen in fragments before. "Jake!" I called, hope igniting within me. I snatched the key and dashed toward the attic door. I could hear nothing but the muffled sounds of the house settling and my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. Gripping the key, I swung open the door and stepped onto the landing. I felt the air shift, and before I could consider my next move, a rush of cold wind erupted from the attic behind me. I turned to glance back, and just like that, the peaceful glow vanished.
The shadows shrank, swirling, until they slipped into the corners and disappeared altogether. "Jake, where are you?" I shouted, my voice cracking as I descended the steps. Fear twisted in my gut as I reached the main floor and realized the house felt utterly deserted. His frantic cries were overridden by the gnawing sound of something lurking beyond sight. Suddenly, I heard a muffled thud from the basement door. My heart raced. There was no time to think. I had to find him. Rushing toward the door, I felt icy dread wash over me, the whispers from before now quiet, as though holding their breath in anticipation. "Jake!" I bellowed, throwing open the basement door. The gloom below seemed to draw in. The shadows shrank, swirling, until they slipped into the corners and disappeared altogether. "Jake, where are you?" I shouted, my voice cracking as I descended the steps. Fear twisted in my gut as I reached the main floor and realized the house felt utterly deserted. His frantic cries were overridden by the gnawing sound of something lurking beyond sight. Suddenly, I heard a muffled thud from the basement door. My heart raced. There was no time to think. I had to find him. Rushing toward the door, I felt icy dread wash over me, the whispers from before now quiet, as though holding their breath in anticipation. "Jake!" I bellowed, throwing open the basement door. The gloom below seemed to draw in the light around me. With the key clutched in my palm, I hesitated only a moment before stepping down into the depths. The basement was unchanged, walls lined with clutter, darkness throbbing in the corners. I fought against the chill creeping up my spine, forcing myself to stay focused. "Jake!" I yelled again, echoing in the confined space. Before long I noticed a faint flicker ahead, a whisper of a shadow moving along the far wall. "Max," came the familiar, haunting tone. My heart sank. I sprinted in that direction. I found him huddled in the far corner, his back to me. For a moment I thought he was unconscious, but as I got closer, I saw he was staring intensely into the darkness, arms wrapped around his knees. "Jake, what's happening?" I urged, shaking him gently. He blinked, slowly turning to face me. "It spoke to me," he murmured, fear etched in his weary features. "It was offering something, but I don't think we can trust it." "We don't have a choice," I insisted, holding the key out to him. "We need to use this. It might be our way out." His gaze shifted to the key, and a flicker of determination ignited within him. "You found it!" "Yeah, but I think we need something else," I said, glancing back into the dark. The air felt pregnant with anticipation. "What if we confront it together, draw it out?" Jake hesitated. "And then what? If it's what we think it is?" "We have to try," I said, fear sharpening my voice. "If we can get it to reveal itself, maybe we can find a way to break the cycle." Together, we whispered into the abyss.
Show yourself. The darkness coiled around us, quivering with a life of its own, before a shadow emerged, a figure, slightly more defined now, its eyes gleaming with insatiable hunger. "What do you want?" I demanded, stepping forward, brandishing the key. "We're not afraid of you." The figure leaned closer, revealing a mouth twisted in a taunting grin. "Help us," it crooned, and laughter erupted, echoing through the room. I glanced at Jake, and for a fleeting moment I saw unease flicker in his gaze. "What if it's playing with us?" he whispered. "Then we fight back," I shouted defiantly, gripping his arm. The moment the darkness began creeping toward us, I inserted the key into a latch concealed just behind the figure, hidden within the shadows. With all my strength I twisted it, and with a loud clatter the shadows erupted. Light flooded the basement as if it were breaking free from a long imprisonment, searing away the darkness that had lain thick for so long. The laughter that filled the room became discordant, discord tearing at the seams of reality. With a final, deafening roar, the figure disintegrated, evaporating into wisps of smoke as the light grew bright and warm, engulfing Jake and me. In that moment, I felt the ground shift beneath us, and the world tilted. Then there was silence. I gasped, finding myself sprawled on cool grass beneath a dim evening sky. The stars twinkled warmly above as I blinked, disoriented. The smell of damp earth surrounded me. I sat up slowly, panic rising. "Jake!" But I was alone. That's when I heard a soft fluttering behind me. I turned to see a familiar outline. He was standing at the edge of the woods. "Max!" he called, stepping closer, relief flooding his expression. "I had no idea where... Is it over?" "I think so," I said, heart racing at the sight of him. "But what happened in there? Did we escape, or did we merely awaken something?" He frowned, glancing back at the shadowy woods behind him. "I don't know. All I know is it still feels... waiting." I felt both lighter and heavier at the same time, the lingering uncertainty hanging in the air. "Do you think we should go back?" Jake asked, a hint of dread creeping into his voice. I shook my head, the unease settling back into my gut. "I don't think we can. Not yet, at least." We stood in silence, watching the stars blink down at us, each one a reminder of what lurked just beyond comprehension. As the night crept on, I realized I would never have the answers I sought. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if Jake still keeps in touch with whatever secrets linger in the shadows, remnants of last New Year's Eve. But I always try not to think about it. Some doors are better left closed.